Yeah, it's kind of sad to watch from the sidelines every LEC final and Worlds. And I know the offseason gets really long and boring just by watching Worlds, so I really want to go back there. And also because I think I'm a much better player than I was when I went at first. And it would be nice to see, like I know kind of where I am in EU, but it's been like 3 years since I played against other regions, so I want to see if I can compete better with them, you know.
And thank you very much, Kobe. Good luck in the series tomorrow. We're going to hand it back across towards PGL. Guys, take it away. Oh, we're fine.
Welcome everyone to the LEC post-game lobby. I'm Sjokz, joined by Ender, YamatoCannon, and Gilius. Now, also, you have to still vote for your player of the series, your Kia player of the series at LOL Esports. Your choices are Vizicachi, Humanoid, and Kobe. And Kobe is who we heard from just now. Yamato, you know this player very well. Of course, you went to Worlds with Splyce in 2016. And he said, we found ourselves at a very big depth after getting knocked out, and they felt really lost after that loss versus Rogue. So it's very commendable that they're able to fight back here in the gauntlet so far.
I think it's sometimes very easy to forget that when you're playing in playoffs, your performance on the day matters so much, and you can have an off day and all of a sudden you find yourself getting 3-0'd by a team that you didn't expect yourself get 3-0'd by. I like that Kobe has found, you know, he has the confidence to admit that he has gotten a lot better, because I remember in the past he was more of a shy person, and he has grown into becoming a more and more confident player that can take charge for his team. And I agree fully with this sentiment that he's gotten a lot better, and to see him at the World Championship would be a treat for all of us.
It definitely would be. Gilius, when we talk about the series, you said in the last game, when we were talking on the desk, this is what I want to see from Splyce. They have to play to their late game prowess, but they're playing such good macro in this last game. Okay, it took a bit before they closed it out, but what was so good about that game 5?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised. There was a shift in the series where Splyce started to play really well in the mid and late game. And I think it had to do with their draft as well. They adapted some things. They understood that Vizicachi is extremely good on GP. Corki is the pick to go. This is all mid-game champs, and also scale to the late game. So they're basically broken. So I think Splyce understood what's better in the late game throughout the series. But I think Yamato also sees this a bit different. So I'm like, because there was some drafts where you thought just by the early game the one team should win. And I think if G2 and Fnatic played these drafts, the early game team would win. But so it was a bit different today.
I think definitely there was a different meta in this particular series. A lot of the comments we made on the analyst desk is not comments I would ever do in a Fnatic G2 series. We put a lot of emphasis on late game. In G2 Fnatic, we were saying it's all about the early game, who gets that first initial kill, gets going, they take it away, and they stranglehold the game. In this series, for sure, the Corki, I think what they did so very well this game, is this game 5?
This is not game 5.
This is the main game.
Mid-game.
I want to talk about game 5 though. So let's go about game 5.
Go
for it.
Nuktak got a kill on Zed, and all of a sudden I got worried. I thought that Nuktak that we know is going to get unlocked and he's going to take charge early of the entire game. But to their ability, you mentioned their macro ability, I think what they did well was get mid-prio, hover into top side to make sure Corki farms, because Zed never had any room to all in to pressure his matchup. Corki out-farmed them. All of a sudden, Zed, that first blood just didn't matter anymore. Yeah. And eventually had 6 items. So, for sure, the meta of the series, late game, Corki.
Did they bend the meta to them?
Well, I mean, I think to a certain extent with the way these two teams play, you definitely expect to see it go much later. For me, it was sort of looking at this final game and in particular that Zed pick with that early lead. OG had a window where they needed to act in the mid game before Zhonya's came through on the AP sort of Kai'Sa build, GA in the mid lane too. There was this window where Nukeduck should have been very strong. I do feel that Splyce sort of just dodged away from. Whenever Zed showed up in a side lane, they just walked away, or in one case, I think top lane, they really tried to force onto him. They were able to get that kill. And by not enabling him to take any 1v1s in the side lane, it just meant that OG's basically win condition didn't exist. Because by all accounts, this was supposed to be a game that's very easy to play Zed into. When there's no reliable CC on the enemy team, when there's very squishy targets, it should have been his to take.
To defend OG, they played with Zanzara today, and they fought for their lives, like bringing Splyce to game 5 with a jungler That's a rookie.
Yeah, good point.
Really good,
Great
yeah.
point.
Very impressive. And Zanzara, he proved something today. Like, he can play on this level. And if I think about myself, Worlds 2014, I got thrown into the boat. Like, Worlds, okay, it's a bit different, right? I entered for my life. He actually played really well. So it seems like this guy has no issues with nerfs, even though he's so young. Back then I had issues with nerfs. I overcame it. But yeah, this mad props to Zanzara. But Sjokz also played really well today.
Well, you didn't say that in the beginning, so do you think that Sjokz really got into the groove as the series went on?
I think Sjokz, after game 1, he understood that he doesn't need to win the early game today to win the series.
But you kept saying that he had to do more in the early
I would love
game.
to add to this point. Honestly, my opinion is that Xerxes was a ghost today. I think my thought process about Splyce, if they're going to win the gauntlet, is going to be in the hands of Xerxes and Kobe, because these are the two stars on this team. When I look at Splyce, I think it's a big deal to me that they managed to win on the hands of Kobe. He played super well this series, and then Xerxes on Game 5 Elise. You know, when you say Elise being 0-0-0 coming into 10 minutes, you start to think, well, why did we pick Elise here? Like, what is he actually doing this game? And I think Xerxes can do a lot better because his regular split performance is fantastic. I don't think he played so well this series.
I agree, and when I go into series and want to pick Elise, I think about early dives. This champ is built to dive towers, to challenge the enemy jungler one-on-one. You have a cocoon, you have 6 abilities in the early game. So it's like similar to Nidalee. So I was really surprised that he took a passive approach, but then he started to pick the more scaling picks. I mean, it's also not true. He picked Olaf. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, so it is also interesting because you think about it, it's Elise paired with what? A Gangplank in the top lane and a Corki in the mid lane. So I do think in general it is hard to try and influence those lanes a lot, but still, like, I think that seeing more cohesive early game drafts to a certain extent, and then also just Xerxes being on the map is what I want to look forward to, especially when considering tomorrow you have Schalke and Trick in the jungle who you know is going to be active.
Yeah, we're going to look forward to that series in just a little bit. To wrap up this one, though, Kia player of the series, Kabi with 49% of the votes. I mean, it's hard to say anything else. That goes often for Splyce, but I do think it highlights once again that we do need other people to also step up for tomorrow if they're going to want to win that series.
My personal MVP in my heart is Vizichachi. I think there's a lot of doubt. There was a lot of doubt about Chachi in this split.
Oh, yeah, I thought you meant me.
No, I don't mean you.
He's not always calling you out, Yamato.
No. Why would I? We had a graph with isolated deaths, 19. Looks pretty bad on paper, but the guy is playing alone. He's playing on an island, and he's trying his best. They understood GP is perfect for him, because GP actually doesn't die on an island. He has an orange. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, yeah, I mean, Kobe got Kaiser every game. He played really well,
And that's
but
it.
I think Chachi pulled the weight today.
Yeah, I agree. Especially like Chachi in laning phase didn't really get to play a lot, especially with like early attention given up towards his lane from OG's side of things. But in team fights, whether it was the Gangplank or I think the Aatrox as well in game 3, he really did have a really big impact in a lot of Splyce's wins.
Yeah, there it goes then. Tomorrow they go up versus Schalke 04 for another best of 5. And the winner will find themselves in Worlds and also buy themselves a best of 5 versus Fnatic for seeding. However, before we move on to that, I do want to wrap up the story of Origen this year. As said, they said it at the beginning of the year. This is a year-long project that we want to have culminate in Worlds. At the end of the day, they didn't get there. And I think it is fair of us to say, very unfortunate the fact that they couldn't play with a jungler that they've practiced with for so long. But I think when you're Origen, you also have to look beyond that and say, why did we find ourselves in this position? And I'm not necessarily saying the gauntlet, but in the first round of the gauntlet or the second one. I think ultimately in summer, there were more things that went wrong than went well for them.
Ultimately for Origen, this year was just completely backwards from them. They never thought that they were going to make it to finals last split in Rotterdam. You know, it was the year-long process as you said, and it felt like they hit that peak, and then in summer, completely lacked an identity. They were really struggling to figure out what made Origen Origen, when in the spring split, they were sort of the chameleon team, where they would play any style match against their opponents. We said it so many times, with a roster this experienced, they had a lot of different tools they could go with. NukeDuck's champion pool, all that great stuff. In summer, it was all about trying to, it felt like mimic some of the styles of G2, or was much more focus on the early game, play through strong, fights around, Dragon or Rift Herald, and they were never able to pull it together. It felt like they lost their own identity, and in that moment, lost what actually made them a great team.
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to start?
Oh, you can go, man.
Okay. I personally think the meta just didn't fit them. I don't think it's like I agree.
Well,
with,
then you have to adapt to the meta.
Like I agree, they didn't have an identity, but I think in spring the game was just so different. You could actually scale up, and they had these veterans, Miffy, like Miffy and NukeDuck's already enough. I think the meta right now is just it was too fast paced in summer split, and they couldn't keep up.
But there I asked the question then, isn't he then right in saying they couldn't find an identity? Because
for sure,
then try and adapt to it, or play your own style that well that it's successful.
I'm trying to explain the reason.
No, for sure.
Like, I absolutely agree. But the game just changed, and it didn't fit them.
I think something I would like to add, my initial point was that, honestly, Summer Split this year was one of the seasons in terms of League of Legends where the game changed the most. It was crazy to keep up with the Silas changes. Every week he got nerfed and changed. Akali got changed every week. There was Mordekaiser, there was Kiana. And I think as Origen as a team, I think when they get to play the same meta over and over, I know that Mythy enjoys this a lot. I know that Cold enjoys this a lot. I know that NukeDuck enjoys this a lot because he can get to use those fringe picks. When he sees the meta evolve in a way where he's like, okay, I can counterpick this and throw that into the mix and be ahead of the curve somehow. The top 3 mid laners that people were playing the entire season were just too strong to counterpick, which is funny. There was Akali, there was Silas, and then Corki at some point.
Flex
and then Azir. They were just too strong to counter. So I think there's this idea behind the meta changing too much. I felt like Origen never really caught on to it, because I think they need the meta to stabilize and all of a sudden find ways to break it in their own way.
Let me ask you.
Okay, but it's the new era of League of Legends.
Exactly. Is that the new reality?
This is the
but
era
Spring
of the
wasn't
young...
like that, right? That's the crazy part. Spring was very...
Yeah, but I like it. This is not a strategic game anymore. It's like, it reminds me of, Tekken. Like, it's all about mechanics.
But
like,
there's a discussion, though, because often people then say, oh, is the game made so much simpler? No, because it's all about those then mechanical decisions and those split-second decisions, which it's a different identity. But would you say it's easier? Clearly not, because it's harder.
I need to spam all day to keep up with players like Sjokz and Broxah right now, because they are training for their lives as well. So I personally think it's much more exhausting to play right now as a pro, and much more draining. But I also like it more because it's something new. Like, I'm sick of Sejuani and Javan and late game and 50-50ing a Nash. I like to win the game in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, like G2, so...
I mean, it just brings out a different skill set, right? It's less of having, a strategic mind and knowing when and where to be on the map. Yes, that does definitely exist to a certain extent, but now it's about knowing, like, how much damage does my champion do relative to the other champions on the map based on the items we have, and doing all this, like, mental math, or a lot of players will just feel that in the moment after spamming, thousands of games over the regular season. You just get a good feeling for that, and then also making sure your hands can keep up with your brain is a huge battle that I know some players have succeeded with, some have not.
I just want to clarify my point that I wanted to make about Origen. Usually, like when I think of Origen, many times they just take some strategies they saw over in Korea, they take some strategies they saw in LPL, they adapt to it and they make it their own, and they continue on like this. Honestly, during Summer Split, almost every region was doing their own thing. Europe was doing their own thing, LPL was doing their own thing, NA was doing their own thing. All of a sudden, there's everyone's carving their own path. I think this is something that Origen, this is all speculation. I have no idea what's going on inside of Origen. All speculation. I think they have a hard time carving their own path in these moments because things are just changing too much. And to speak about what I think what the game should be, I love the fact that the game is dynamic. It should be, because players are challenged in such a way, and we should not be surprised that the game changes. It's just how it is.
And Yamato was my coach in Vitality, and he taught me that laning phase and early game matters. Because I, back then, thought it's all about late game, because all the championships were won by late game games. So that's why Vitality plays so crazy. It's like you play for winning lanes, you play for a winning jungle matchup, and then it's about the execution. And that's like G2 and Fnatic are doing the exact same. China, it's actually the Vitality meta. But I don't know, you guys.
It all goes back to that speech of you. What you said, that's why everyone's carving their own path, Yamato.
Yeah, I mean, this is a thing that's actually existed for a while now, right? You talk about the championships won with late game scaling metas. That was last spring, right? But then the MSI came and the mid-season came, and that was the huge shift last year where all of a sudden it was mages in the bottom lane all the time.
Can I just jump in? You say it was last spring. G2 3-0'd OG in the fastest best of 5.
So no, last spring is in 2018.
Oh, 2018.
2018
I thought you
spring.
meant last spring.
No.
But Sjokz, that's the problem. G2 can play scaling and early game.
Yeah, and we saw that. We all, I'm sure everyone remembers last split.
last year, yeah.
No, sorry, now last split.
Okay,
when
now
G2 played Fnatic in a best of 1, and it went to like 15 minutes. It ends with Reckless backdooring in that game. But that game, Fnatic smashed them in 20 minutes, right? G2 held with them for so long. It was crazy.
I love this discussion, and we're going to talk a lot more about it in the next 2 days. I do also want to look forward to the specific matchup we have tomorrow, which is Schalke 04 versus Splyce. With all this talk about the meta, Splyce just played late game for 4 games in a row. So how much is Schalke going to push them out of their comfort zone, Ender?
A lot. This team loves to fight you in the mid game. This is a team that is very much focused on team fighting, particularly with Upset, who's on your screen right there. I think he's one of, if not our best team fighting ADCs in the league at the moment. I think he's really on top of his game. But they love to force fights around mid lane. It's not necessarily a purely objective focused team fight team. This team just likes to fight you when they see an angle. And that means Ignar coming in on a flank or Odoamne coming in on a flank. They always look for this fight around the mid lane. When you think you're safe and pushing up, and that's going to happen to Splyce tomorrow, they're going to think they're safe. Schalke is going to be there to fight.
So more mid game, but I feel like there's some overlap here also in the champions that work for both teams or could be. You know, Upset also wants a lot to do in the late game as well, but then they force more mid. Yamato, what do you think it's going to come down to?
I feel like, you know, I compare the two teams. I think they're very, very similar in the sense that they have success when the top laners are left on an island. Odoamne with the Cannon, with the Rumble, with the GP. This is some overlap in what they could potentially pick in the top lane. I think what Schalke does a lot better is that they add extra steps to reach that point where Upset can actually carry. They make the impactful ganks onto the bottom lane. They make plays that secure them dragons. They actually pressure when they have mid priority into something. They just add a lot more steps to get them ahead. And I think this is something we didn't see at all from Splyce. That's why I want Xerxes to wake up, because there's absolutely no action beyond the point where, okay, we don't need to be proactive. We're waiting for the late game, 6 items, let's go. Schalke are not going to wait around. They're not actually going to do shit.
Yeah, I also think this could be a wake-up series for Vizicachi in the top lane too. We've talked about his isolated deaths. Trick and Ignar love to attack side lanes. They will not give any side laners a chance to breathe. They will come flank you. You won't see them coming. So this is something Splyce going to have to look out for.
Super exciting also in terms of like just the players on both rosters who could finally qualify for Worlds. You know, Chachi, Upset, who is like the best AD carry to never play at Worlds out of Europe, who we really want to see. Odoamne, last time he went, he played in Madison Square Garden. He played the semi-final. So, you know, no, it's a bit out there, but still.
What was Albus Nox?
Albus Nox Luna in the quarterfinal, and then 3-0 in Madison Square
That was
Garden.
a tough series.
Hey, you can only beat what's in front of you, Berk.
Yeah, I know.
So, what's your prediction for tomorrow, Gilius?
I think it's a bad matchup for Splyce if they play like this again. As Yamato said, Xerxes get some good rests. Show up tomorrow. NorthGaren, same thing. If these two don't wake up, they'll lose tomorrow. And whoever gets Kaiser, I mean,
who wins the game?
That the problem is, Cobber can have Kaiser, but Upset plays a Lucian. That has not been seen before. The short dash Lucian of Upset. the lane presence.
Yeah.
He plays Lucian like Forgiven in his days in H2K. So. Cobber?
Is this marksman difference tomorrow?
I mean, the game is on. I think, yeah, whoever wins goes to Worlds, right?
Yep.
And yeah, it's going to be fun.
Oh, super, super exciting. That's tomorrow. But if you missed anything today from Splyce versus OG, be sure to check out our broadcast starting in a few minutes. I was going to say, is it fair to say tomorrow we want to see better League of Legends in the best of 5?
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just say that, you know, the fact that we have to make this isolated meta for the series, that we say, oh, pick Corki and so forth, and just comparing it to G2 Fnatic, it needs to level up.
But we can't always, like, the thing is, we can't always, like, G2 and Fnatic are better than the rest, right? But we still wanted to see something more.
The other side of the coin is we are blessed because G2 Fnatic are really, really good.
Hopefully.
Yep. And on the other side, this is really stressful for the teams.
I guess the final is stressful too.
Yeah. I think G2 didn't... I mean, it didn't look stressful for G2, the finals, honestly. But it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
It's all or nothing for these teams, and they just went the safe way. But this is not how you win the gauntlet. So that's the message, I think.
Okay.
We can...
I love it. Did you hear it? Splyce and Sjokz tomorrow. We'll leave it all on the Rift, rather. That's going to be it from us here on our first day of the gauntlet. Thank you so much. We'll be back tomorrow for Sjokz versus Splyce, with the winner going to Worlds 2019. See you then.
Bye.
Mithy on the front line, Norskev and Xerxes. Kobe Cuban would have to do something huge here. The death charge going to come out. Mithy caught out, but it dived onto the back line. Patrick almost down. Kobe takes him out, and now it's a 4v4. Xerxes gone up. Mithy goes down. Another kill comes out. Alfari on the chase. Nuket's going to get a stun off, and it's Alfari on Nuketog catching out Kobe. Or Zanzara's the one to be caught out. Counter strike from Alfari gets the double stun. Chachi down into Mininar, and here comes the damage. The charm on the back line. Origen have found their fight. They're just going to demolish Splyce here. There's nothing Splyce can do about it at all. No jumping onto the backline, an incredible cast! Separates Origen, scatters them to the winds, and Splyce have found 2 quick kills. Kobe on the chase now as Patrick's going to fall as well. It's a double for Chachi, and that should be it. Origen just get demolished around the Baron. Splyce find the fight they were looking for. TP used here by Humanoid. He's going to join the fight, has the package. Norskev already down, but look at the kills. Already Nuketog's gone down as well. Mithy and Patrick. Patrick having to flash away. Humanoid still on the chase. Alfari and Zanzara on the top side of the fight. Sashimi, beautiful play by Origen. Chachi tries to do what he can, but it's a triple. Make that 5 for Origen as they destroyed Splyce. Origen go in and go down in a heartbeat. Splyce will take the win. They'll win the series 3-2. Splyce take it. Splyce will fight Sjokz, and Splyce's worlds are still alive.